everyone. We're getting into the Akashic Records. And so I'd like to just kind of talk about some of my goals here in this 2-hour masterclass, by the way. I don't think it's going to last 2 hours. I'm really hoping that it won't, but I do know that it's a lot of information for me to get through, and I'm going to do my best to get through it rather quickly and still be able to answer questions and still be able to open this up to a conversation and have it be something that we can all kind of come to a place of our own personal understanding. My goal is never to tell you how to practice. My goal is never to tell you how or what to believe. We know this, but I still think it's really important to premise this early on when I'm speaking, because I think in a lot of spiritual communities that tends to be something that just gets overlooked in the conversation, which is the intention of the instructor. And I don't want to overlook that. My intention is only to challenge what you think you know. That's it. That's it. Or to inform if you don't know. That's it. And to help you make your own opinion based on the information that is available to us. Without taking it at face value, but giving it an opportunity to kind of settle potentially in a new way. As a revisionist myself, I'm someone that loves to tear something apart, loves to look at it through a new lens, loves to look at something that may have been sort of seen one way and then given a new opportunity to exist in a different way. And very specifically, the Akashic Records for me was a 2-year rabbit hole early on in my spiritual journey. And I have an entire reading list for you that I can give you at some point, and it'll be different books that I think are good books to read in regards to the Akashic Records, and educating yourself further on it, or just frankly wanting to read them for yourself, because a lot of the records are available to us. Very specifically, one of his readings, reading 3744-5, is a reading that I'm actually going to go over with you, that I have printed out in its entirety for you, all 6 pages. And it has been highlighted by me and just different key points that I find very fascinating, that I think we should absolutely talk about and kind of discuss and go over. I'm also going to go over his perspective on evolution and give you an in-depth comparison to what we have as scientific fact in comparison to what he openly taught. Some of the things that we're going to go over is a lot of the set expectations that Edgar had sort of explained throughout his documentation of his readings, and the way that's been interpreted throughout the years through occultism, and how it's been there's just been very little to no revision on it whatsoever. And I find it to be really fascinating that we're still talking about it being this place of books, when he very clearly stated that it was never a place of books. And so there's a lot of things that I just don't think people really know about these records. And we're going to go into all of it. So really strap in. And that's not to discredit your experience if you have personally gone to a library where there was a bunch of records and books, because I myself have personally seen a library where there was books, but when I saw the records, it looked like VHSs. And that's why on the poster for this, there was a man's hand going across VHSs. So I think that the psyche perceives the records in different ways. And we're going to go over that because that was something that he also spoke about. He never said that it was a library, and that it was very clearly just a way that consciousness could perceive something as deep as memory within within consciousness. So we'll go over that. We're going to go over some origins too. We're going to go over the key figures prior to Edgar, like Helena, Henry, and Rudolph. I'll explain each of. I'll educate you on who they were and who, what, where, how, why, when. Everything that has to do with the records, and then we'll go into the sleeping prophet himself and all that there was to know about him. We'll go into the records, what they had to say about reincarnation, karma, soul's purpose. He spoke a lot about Atlantis. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about his obsession with the soul's evolution, his perspective on evolution as a whole. Like I said, I'll explain that later on. And then we're going to talk about the readings themselves. Most of his readings were actually documented, although they have been transcribed. And so it's important to take that into consideration when you are doing research, is that you are reading documents that have been transcribed by different authors. So just something to think about when you are doing advanced research, is that you're going to come up against different transcriptions of these particular events. And so something to think about. But the types of readings that he did were physical health readings, life readings in regards to past lives and their purpose, or karmic memory. He did a lot of readings about consciousness, dreams, the changes within the earth, and then Atlantis and Atlantis materials. Like I said, I have a source list for you and a book list if this is something that you're interested in moving forward, that you want to continue to dive into or educate yourself further on. I'll give you that reading list at the end. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 specific books. But a lot of people, when it comes to Atlantis, read Edgar Cayce or Cayce on Atlantis. And then we're going to go into a section towards the end that is important to me, which is reinterpreting the Akashic Records beyond a Christian lens. I think that's a really, really, really important part of this masterclass, and why I chose to do so. There was a very linear salvation model to the Akashic Records by Edgar. And that is something that, in my opinion, I have a very hard time shaking when you are a psychic who works with the records, but you are also not a Christian. I have a hard time shaking it, like through and through. I really do. Because it's a little, it's basically like, to me, it's like saying, like, I observe this, but I don't practice it at all. And he was an avid Christian. It's not a little bit. It's not like he had like Christian leaning here. We're not talking about a man who was Christian leaning. We're talking about a devout Christian man who was a Sunday school teacher. He was a devout Christian. And so he had a lot of moralization upon karmic memory that I think is really important to discuss. He used a ton of Book of Life cosmology throughout his readings, a ton. And so we have to dissect that. Like I said, this was 2 years of my life, was reading his readings, sitting down and reading the readings of a psychic, the sleeping prophet's readings. And they're hard to read, honestly. And it's very time consuming, but I had to go through it and literally dissect Christianity out of it in order to apply some of what he said into my practice, because outside of the Book of Life and the moralized karma and the linear salvation models, he has so much to offer us. It's insane. Like, insane how much this man was capable of receiving in the late 1800s as a psychic, doing psychic work, literally laying on the couch, sending himself into self-hypnosis, and then just saying, like, here I go, and just having conversations with the fucking universe. Really, really, really impressive and beautiful, and something worth, I think, reading without a doubt. And so it may seem like I'm here to tear apart the Akashic Records, because as a revisionist, that is what I do, and I do it quite well. But I am also a revivalist in the sense of getting the information. And so, like I said, I do have some books and book recommendations for you if it is something that you would like to get your hands on the information itself before you yourself choose to go through it and tear it apart. And that's the beautiful thing about these types of things, is that when we have documentation, we get to do that. And my hope is that 100 years from now, when Lunchtime with Demons is floating around, that somebody takes that book and tears it apart and says what a, how biased I was or whatever by whatever throws me under the bus, and then takes their 2% or 5% and does something better with it, because that's what's glorious about evolution, is that we just get better and smarter. One of my favorite things that Edgar says actually in one of his readings is he straight up says, "We do not come from monkeys." And he says it so aggressively, and it's written in all caps because he was deeply in meditation when he said this. And the irony is that I genuinely believe that what he's speaking of is consciousness. He's talking about the difference between he's basically saying that consciousness does not come from microbiology, but that consciousness is something that is layered upon it. It's like a layer upon the biological body. And I agree with him, but we still have to take into consideration that there is scientific fact. And so I think it's really important that we use our discernment as we go through things, and that we still like hear what they're saying, but we also have to be willing to read through the lines. We have to be willing to be fluid enough and be tuned in, tapped in enough to be able to discern between what was available to him. Think about that. What was available to him? He didn't have the internet. He didn't have ChatGPT, guys. He didn't have that. He was like us in high school. Oh, wait a minute. I just aged myself super hard. Although somebody last night said I looked 25. And you know what? Mom is aging backwards.
You are 25.
25 in my heart.
You were 26 a couple weeks ago.
I was 26 a couple weeks ago. I got ID'd like at the store yesterday. Oh my gosh. Can't stop, won't stop. But it was truly like just it's something that I don't even know what I'm saying now because I made an ass of myself, but here we are, and I'm just really excited to go over all of this with you. We'll go over some of the different religions as well that kind of he could have also kind of I don't want to say he was influenced by this potential. But again, there are without a doubt a lot of influences that he had, and you see them play out, and I think that's really cool. But I also think that there was a lot of downloads and a lot of gnosis that he also received on top of those influences that we can dissect and kind of pull out, and I hate to say cherry pick, but very much cherry pick out and apply. Somebody on TikTok said, I experienced the records as a library up in the sky that had hidden rooms that would appear. And we're going to go into that. We're going to go into how so many people experience the records. But like I said, I'm not here to be a bully. I'm not here to be the bad guy or the mean guy, but I'm going to challenge you on these things because I think it's really important that when we see things, that we challenge them and we look at them, and that we do not settle or make conclusions about what we think we're seeing and feeling and experiencing. Because why not? Because my goal at this point is to give you permission to deconstruct and encourage you to walk the path of your own personal cosmology. That's my goal, always through and through, no matter what. That is more important to me than anything else as an educator in the occult, is that you don't subscribe to anything or anyone. Okay? Including myself. Cool. Great. With that being said, subscribe to my YouTube. I had to. It was like so good. It's like it just lined up, you know. Like if I didn't, it just would.
You had to.
The joke was there. It was there. It was set. I was set up for it.
You set yourself.
I set myself up for it, and
on accident. I'm assuming.
Yeah, and if I didn't take it, it would just be a shame.
You're a comedian.
No, I mean,
above all else.
Above all else. All right, so let's get into these guys. There are key figures in the development of the Akashic Records. So there are people that nothing comes from nothing, guys. Okay, now there's nothing new under the sun. Like, have you ever heard that term? If you're a writer, you have. But if you're not a writer, welcome to the term. There's nothing new under the sun. And that terminology exists because it's true. Everything is influenced by everything. And so nothing comes from nothing. So someday, 200 years from now, when they're looking at Lunchtime with Demons, they're going to say, this bizarre book was influenced by these other writers, S. Connolly, Michael Ford, he's a racist, and, all these things. And they're going to put them all together. The irony is they're right. Like they're right. I'm influenced, right? How could I not be? We're all talking about the same shit. And so these people also talked about the same shit. Just at different times in their life. And so that's the way it goes. So we're going to talk about Helena first, and I'm going to butcher her name, but I think it's Blavatsky. Is that right, Ryan? Is it Blavatsky?
Yeah, that's what I take it as, Blavatsky.
Blavatsky. 1831 through 1891. So Helena was a Russian occultist. She was the co-founder of the society whose work laid the foundation for the modern esoteric concept for the Akashic Records. A widely traveled and controversial figure, she claimed contact with the advanced spiritual she claimed contact with a bunch of shit, okay? Like, not just humans. She claimed contact with literally everything. She would literally be like, this train is talking to me, and then people would be like, what? And she'd be like, don't get on the train. Like, literally, she claimed that she could talk to anything, which I think is kind of cool. But she then later why is my brain blanking? Sorry. I have bullet points and I probably should have wrote it a little bit more clearly. But anyway, so she claimed contact with a bunch of gods, a bunch of different entities, she could talk to literally anything and everything as long as it had an energetic current. And then she sought to synthesize Western occultism with Eastern religious philosophy. So her main goal as an occultist was to basically bring the East to the West and honestly, thank you. But also, she was also, a lot of people would consider her to be, what's the word? Well, a bad person. For lack of better words, I don't know. Like a scam. A lot of people. She did a lot of shitty things. That doesn't mean that she wasn't psychic. It just means that she sometimes used her abilities, I think, to scam people. And sometimes you gotta buy bread, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't alive in the 1800s, and I don't know how hard it was, but I can only imagine in the 1800s being a psychic, how hard it was to make your money, so I'm sure at times you did some shady shit. But her major works, so she worked with Isis, and one of her major works was Isis Unveiled and the Secret Doctrine. And it described the Akashic Records as a cosmic substance through which all events are recorded and helped introduce karma, reincarnation, and esoteric evolution into Western metaphysical thought. So that book, Isis Unveiled and the Secret Doctrine, it described that there was this I don't know how to explain it because the way she explains it in the book throughout the book is kind of strange, but the best way I could put it was subtle substance because it's like she described it like an energy that you kind of move through and then your conscious kind of locks into that frequency and then you have access to all things. So you would have access to what we now call the records, but it was more of like a current and or frequency. But it was basically like once you access that, she could access that. And that's what she was telling you she could do. So that's what she was basically taking money for. She was sitting there saying, I can take your money and I can tell you about like your karma, what you're here doing, why you're like what your life purpose is. And you came back to this life to fix this thing. And it's very fascinating. And so she kind of introduces reincarnation through a lens of the metaphysical. Let me be very clear. She did not introduce karma or reincarnation to the world. Let's be very clear about that. She did not do that. That was already a religious practice. But because it was a philosophy, an Eastern philosophy in which she observed, she included it in her book about how she practiced as an occultist. Do we get it? So if you read my book, you're going to see a lot of Taoist sort of perspectives. Does that mean Bella introduced Taoism to the world? No, this Taoism exists before me. So she was someone who kind of helped push, though, reincarnation and karma through a more esoteric lens. Because what was her goal was to bring Eastern philosophy to the West. And her work with Isis, and she accomplished that to some degree. So are we good on Helena? Okay. I see that there's a lot of questions in the TikTok feed. Save them to the end or save them till I open us up for questions, if that's okay. Henry Olcott. Are we ready for Henry? So Henry was roughly around 1832 through 1907. So Henry was an American lawyer and journalist, and he was a Civil War officer who co-founded the society with Helena. And he served as a organizer and sort of like institutional builder. So he basically like was, I just almost called him her bitch boy, but that's not what I meant to say.
I just wish you had said
didn't
it,
have the like right words for it.
Use your impulse.
But he later on relocated to India, and he became an incredibly like prominent like convert to Buddhism, which I think is really fascinating. And he played a major role in reviving Buddhist education in the West. So now you think about this, we have two people really kind of pushing Eastern philosophy and now Buddhism. So we have like so much happening. We have all this like Eastern practice just getting flooded into Western occultism in the 1800s. Flooded. So we wonder how these things get into each other. This is how. We have exposure to other religions, and that's what's so important. We have exposure to other ways of thought, and it changes our ways of thought. The moment you release what you think you know, and you have exposure to something that you never knew before, that bubble gets popped, and it's never coming back. This is why so many Christian sects are so fast to tell you, don't ask questions, don't look, don't learn, don't do it. And they're right. Because they say you will leave. You'll deconstruct and you will leave. And they are dead fucking right. They're dead right. And it's because the moment you have exposure to a new way of thought, it is very hard to put yourself back on that straight and narrow path of this is the one true way. This is the only way. Well, it's like, how is it the only way when there's all of this? How? How? It doesn't make any sense. So when we open ourselves up to that, it's incredible. And we should be so grateful for these two, because frankly, this sort of push into Westernization is the reason why we're capable of having so many new ways of looking at the occult. Because we can go, we can look at it through this lens, this lens, this lens, this lens. We can look at it through this, that, and the other thing. And we don't just subscribe anymore, which is great. And that's what's so wonderful about being an occultist, is that we don't have to subscribe. Later on, we have Rudolf Steiner, who was a Austrian philosopher. He was a psychic. Rudolf was a psychic, very, very psychic. And he also worked with them. And he basically, when he had access to the Akashic Records, the way he described it was the Akashic Chronicle, which makes me think of the Chronicles of Narnia, like instantly. But he said that it was a record of human and cosmic evolution, and it presented clairvoyance as a disciplined method of spiritual perception. So it validated clairvoyance. He believed that the Akashic Records was a place in which a psychic could have their clairvoyance validated, which I think is really fucking cool. If you think about that for a second. How many times do you go into meditation or you see something clairvoyantly that you sit there and you say, I don't know. How do I know it's real? How do I know it's not my imagination? How do I know? And he was saying, well, this place you go and you see shit that you shouldn't see. You tell someone what you're seeing and they're like, how the fuck did you know that? And then boom, you have external validation. So boom, that now somehow made clairvoyance valid, which dope. So his influence extended beyond esoteric practices, and it moved into education because he came up with the I can never say this right, but the Waldorf schools, and it was like of like agriculture, medicine, and arts. And so he pushed beyond esoteric practice, and it basically he took his influence from like esoteric practices, from being a psychic, and he wanted to apply them in a more practical and like physical way. And so he influenced a ton of people to take what they do as a psychic and do something bigger with it that is physical. So like basically, like, I've decided that I'm going to become an artist because I see these things and I want to draw them. Kara is a good example of this. It's just kind of taking what you do as a psychic and then applying it on a bigger platform, and not just saying that psychic work has to stay within the metaphysical. It can the metaphysical world or the occult world, but it can move out to the whole world. It showed us that there was a way you didn't have to hide underground and be a psychic, but instead you could use your psychic abilities to very literally change the earth, change the world, do something bigger, which I think is very cool. So then we have Edgar. Edgar, his name is French, and so I can't say it right. Some people will say Edgar Cayce, some people will say Edgar Cayce. It's up to you, whatever floats your boat. We're going to call him Edgar. So Edgar was an American trance psychic known as the Sleeping Prophet. He was the one who made the Akashic Records go from just a small conversation to dominating. He's the reason you know about it, basically. Like he took it from being something that was talked about in small occult societies and groups to being something that everyone was talking about. Now, it could have been the boom of psychic activity within the early Victorian era and everyone being on cocaine. That's really possible. Like, they were fucked up, walking around, did no shit. They were literally like doing coke for breakfast. You know, there was lead everywhere. I mean, Victorians were a mess. I don't know how they fucking survived. They didn't, honestly. They didn't. A lot of them died. They let their kids hang outside windows and cages. Like, Victorians were a mess. They were absolutely a mess. Experimenting on each other. They thought women wanting to come, it was like suddenly we were hysterical. It was crazy. It's a crazy time. It's a crazy time to be alive. You couldn't even be sick. They'd be like, oh, you're sick? Here's morphine. You got a cold? Here's some coke. Do it. Go home. You're gonna feel fucking great. Coked out of your mind. You're like, there's a ghost. It's a ghost that talked to me. And she's like, no, I don't know. It's just the medicine. It was a rough life if you were in the Victorian era, and he was. So it is very possible that that is why he was able to just, like dominate when it comes to being the sleeping prophet. This fucking, like, he was like the Akashic Records, and everyone was like, wow, oh my God, therapy, it's a thing now, and we're talking about philosophy, and suddenly we care about the brain. What? We have feelings? Like, oh my gosh, such a crazy time. Yeah. I'm sorry, I love the Victorian era, and like maybe I'll do a masterclass just on the Victorian era because I think that you guys might really like that. Because it's kind of a hoot, and like you realize just how fucked we were. Like, I don't know how we survived. I'll be really honest. If you're here, you survived. Like, you need to take that in. Like, you survived the Victorian era, which means your ancestors did something right somewhere, somehow, because it was actually really tough to live through that. Like, really hard. Really hard. You could have literally just died from someone's refrigerator falling on your head. Like, there was no rules. The Victorian era was crazy. And that was just like a metal box that someone bought ice and put in because like they didn't know what refrigerators were. They were like, this is a new thing. And then they were like, here's ice. I don't know what to do with it. And they were so excited about it. Like, what weirdos we were. Okay. So Edgar, here we go. He was an American psychic, the sleeping prophet, who polarized Akashic Records in the 20th century through thousands of documented readings. Okay, y'all, you're out here reading certain files. Get to reading. You want to read the Epstein files, read the Edgar files too. Okay, because it gets crazy. Less cannibal, more weird. But there are, so there's thousands of documented readings given by him while he was in a self-induced trance. And fun fact, he was a devout Christian, as I've said before. He described accessing a universal record of the soul's journey, which he equated to the biblical book of life. And his readings introduced reincarnation, karma, soul grouping, and Atlantis to the mainstream. And it created one of the largest recorded bodies of trance material in modern history. If you are a psychic and you have not sat down to read some of Edgar's readings, I have a question for you. Why not? Do you document all your readings? No. Do you document thousands of your own self-trance? No. Was he a fraud? I don't know. No, I don't think so. No motherfucker has that time and attention to ask his wife to sit down and literally record his readings for that long, if he didn't believe in what he was doing. So, do I think that they're all right? No, absolutely not. Did I tear them apart and take what I like and leave what I don't? 100%. I'm that dick. Do I think that he died with a conviction in his fucking soul that he was a sleeping prophet and he was giving us what the Lord above wanted him to give us? Absolutely. Amen. I do think that. I think he died on that hill. I do. Looking at his reports of every single motherfucking thing he did. There was even in his readings, there are reports of subsequent data, okay? Broken down index readings of the angels that he interacted with, every single Bible passage in which he felt inspired him throughout that reading is documented. There are literal, like every single reading is broken down by the subject of it. So you've got like the reading that I have here printed out that I'm going to read to you is 3744-5. It's called The Psychic Phenomena Through the Subliminal. It has literally the text of reading. This psychic reading is given by Edgar Cayce in the Phillips Hotel in Dayton, Ohio. This is the 14th day of February. Why do you think I picked it? It's on my favorite holiday. Happy Valentine's Day. In accordance with the request made by 5717, 953, and 294. Those are the people that were present. So he was really specific about not naming people unless he could. He was also like entities present. He would give them numbers, or like he would give numbers of like different data that he had used before and he wanted to reference. These were very intricate references. Okay. Later on, he says present is Edgar Cayce, Lyndon Schrower. The conductor is Gladys Davis Stano. And the reading, the time, so he did name people here, but the time of the reading is in the Phillips Hotel at 3 p.m. in Dayton, Ohio. And the question was, what are the laws governing relativity of all force? And then he goes on for 6 pages of a trance answer. And I'm going to read it to you later. But why do I think that this is important? I think it's important because he felt conviction in what he did. I think anytime someone feels conviction in what they do, there's something to be gained from it. Something to be gained from it. Do I think the Bible has things to be gained from, even though I'm not Christian? Yeah, without a doubt. I still have mine. It's like literally at my feet right now. And it's covered in highlight marks and notes. Why would I not? Anything written with conviction deserves to be looked at. But there comes a bigger question is, when do I adhere? When do I subscribe? And when do I observe this for myself? And that question can only be answered by the self. There's something in you that should illuminate, should lighten your entire system. You should feel levity, joy, peace. It should just fill your cup instantly. And that's how you know that it's something that your spirit is supposed to observe. And whether you observe that for a month, for 6 months, for 4 years, or for the rest of your existence, I think observation of thought, feeling, or any sort of philosophy or any sort of spiritual practice can be so incredible. And so I think this is what brought us here today, is talking about this particular psychic and his really cool journey and how we can interact with it. So we talked about the key figures in which developed the Akashic Records, which is really interesting. And now we're going to talk about some of his main thought points. So I want to just kind of hit these because I think they're important. Let's talk about Atlantis. So one of his biggest readings is reading 364-3. So just keep that in mind, 364-3. If you want to download it, you can. If you have Scribbler, that sounds like a Batman character. I might be making that up. I don't know what it's called.
Is the book app?
No, it's the book app where you can download books.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called?
It used to be called Scribbler. It got a name change.
Okay. Well, you can download a lot of these things if you have a subscription to them. I do have a subscription. So if you're like hard on cash and you're like, listen, I can't afford that, and you're like, bitch, give me those PDFs, I could probably get you some. But yeah, so the reading is 364-3. I wish I could read you all these readings, but we'd be here for all time and eternity. But I do have the readings and I'll tell you them. So write them down. Like I said, I wanted you to have a notebook so you could take notes. So this way you can go back, and if you're like, I really want to know about Atlantis, through Edgar's perspective, that, you know, this is the way to do it. Okay. So the context of this particular reading is it's a reading describing Atlantis. It describes reincarnation, and it describes karmic soul groups. It's a very fascinating reading. I highly suggest reading it. if you're interested in Atlantis and like how he sort of became obsessed with it, which is very cool. The key points in that would be that the Akashic Records are a dimension of consciousness containing the complete soul history, and that you ascend through the superconscious mind. So he introduces this in reading 364-3, like I said. He goes on to talk about the individuals that lived in Atlantis. He specifically talks about a group that misused crystal technology, so that they were using the crystals of the land the same way that we're using crystals on our altars. Like I have a bucket of crystals. I'm like, crystals! Basically, the Atlanteans misused crystal technology. And then he talks about the same souls reincarnating together to restore the energetic balance of Earth. So it's very fascinating. Some of the biggest things that are in that particular reading is that he talks about soul groups returning across timelines. This is that introductory of soul families, and how they kind of return and they stay with each other over and over and over. So that's interesting. He talks about karma as energetic rebalancing, that it's not just memory, but it's something that we can rebalance. And then he talks about our spiritual abilities. And then he talks about how the mind itself has to ascend in order to access the records. So that reading in 364-3, really, really cool. I highly suggest studying that reading. The second reading that I'm going to tell you to study is reading 281-2. 281-2. In this reading, he talks very specifically about karma. And he talks about how karma shows us the gifts that we have carried throughout lifetime. So our own personal spiritual gifts. Again, me, Abella, I do not believe that our spiritual abilities are gifts. But if you ever wondered why that really has gotten around town, that we have spiritual gifts, guess what homie put that in our heads? Oh my gosh, you're right. Edgar. You nailed it. It became very, very, very huge. The Victorian era, people were like, do you have gifts? Are you from Atlantis? Just because you have a transatlantic accent doesn't mean you're from Atlantis. Like, this was straight up, like, people were like, you have a gift. Oh, you're gifted. You're one of those. That's wonderful. But don't bring it around here. We're children of God. I'm going to go do cocaine because I have a very bad headache. And later on, I have a hysterical appointment at the doctor. But don't you worry. After that, I'm going to read my Bible for 5 minutes. So, it's just like, truthfully, like, this is the introduction of it being a gift. So I think I'm kind of lying, because there was another really, really dominant introduction really, really, really early on. If we look at the witch trials in oh my god, in my brain is saying Spain, or maybe the demons are saying Spain. España. Who was saying it? Belial? Why are you saying Spain? I thought it was Italy. Belial was saying Spain. He's talking about the witch trials in Spain. But he's saying that there was Salem was way after. No. There was witch trials for a very long time, way hundreds of years before we ever got to Salem. But when the witch trials in Spain is what he's talking about. Can someone just fact check me real fast? Is it the witch trials in Spain that had to do with ISIS?
You're referencing the Spanish Inquisition.
With ISIS?
I don't know if it started with ISIS, but it definitely had to do with the Roman Catholic Church.
I thought this was before the Spanish Inquisition, what I'm thinking of.
I thought the trials for ISIS were in Italy.
That's what I thought. So I was like, that's what I was about to say, Italy. But why is he saying Spain in my head?
There's something about the Basque trials and Nerossi trials that were associated with ISIS, but that seems later though. Like
That was the
1525 and
Basque witch
16.
trials were in like 1609, according to
Yeah.
Google.
Interesting. I wonder if that maybe Belial was also just trying to tell me that that also played a part.
I also heard Spain when you said it too, so if that helps.
Really strange, because I was about to say the witch trials with ISIS involving ISIS in Italy is also one of the first times that we heard about like gifts being a big thing, because a lot of the people were receiving huge gifts from ISIS while they were being murdered. And they would talk about that. And then that sort of spread throughout Italy, was that like, it's that people were gifted, that you were gifted if you had the sight of ISIS, if you could see and speak to ISIS while you were kind of dying. And Christianity absorbed that very heavily, and was like, well, if you're talking to Jesus or you're talking to God, or you have this gift of sight. And so Italy and their sort of interaction and their sort of oppression of ISIS really did kind of perpetuate the gift concept. But it seems like King Belial has something else to say about the Basque trials in Spain and how that also played a part in the gifts. So there might be some sort of folklore there that I'm not aware of sort of oral traditions passing on gift conversations that I will take a look at and get back to you on. Thank you, King Belial, for your input. Love you very much. All right, moving on. So back to life reading 281-2. This talks a little bit about showing gifts carried across a lifetime. It also is very specific because he has, I think in this reading, he has like a person there. And the individual was a temple healer in Egypt. So he's going through this guy's records, or woman's record. I don't know if it's a guy or girl. He's going through the records. And it basically, like, he was a temple healer in Egypt. And he talks about sound and vibration and how you can actually like work with it, like working with frequency. So we have the introduction of that conversation. We also have, he talks about how in the present life that they feared using their abilities because they were so scared of using their psychic abilities in that life because they had misused their abilities in their previous life. What I will say, let me just add one more thing. Sorry. In that reading, I think he talks very heavily about spiritual gifts coming with us across incarnations. He talks about past life fears being linked to past life memories. He also talks about soul continuity. So basically the soul repeating itself or doing things in order to heal karma. But this is what's really interesting. I want to just point out some of the things that people don't realize about Edgar, that it is documented in multiple of his readings, is that he did not believe that you had karmic debt. He didn't. He believed that karma was memory, and that memory did not mean you were in debt to karma. It just meant that you needed to become aware. It was awareness itself that rose your consciousness. And I'm in the reading that I'm going to read for you. You'll hear him talk about that a little bit. So I think that that's really, really interesting because I do appreciate that perspective, because I am someone who doesn't observe karma. I don't believe that I'm in debt to anything. I've never believed that, and I refuse to believe that. I'm not paying for shit. That is not why I came here. But I do believe in memory, that there is a memory within it's almost like inside of my, it sounds so weird, but like, you know how Olaf talks about water having memory in Frozen 2? Straight up, we're made of water. And I have this theory that like biological memory is a part of this. I watch my daughter have abandonment issues when homegirl has never been abandoned a day in her fucking life. And ever. That's generational trauma passed right the fuck down from me. And so if that generational trauma is getting passed down through our DNA, there is water memory, DNA memory in our body. And I don't, thank you, Imani. Absolutely. And there's a really good book on that I'm lacking the name, but I bet you know it. Oh, my husband just read it too. I wish Garrett was up here so I could ask him. But we are very, I don't know, that's my theory. Again, just theorizing. But I do love that he spoke of it in a very similar way, in that he never said that this was something that was a debt to be paid. But he also felt that it was something that was just a part of us, and part of our ascension was just becoming aware that there's a lot of accountability and self-awareness, and that's really, really, really important that we learn as much about ourselves on a conscious level as possible. And that doesn't always, to me, that doesn't mean diving into your past lives. I think that is where he and I very much like hit a crossroads, is that I do not think that diving into your past lives is always important for everyone, because I do not always believe that the consciousness that is within a person is has been here before, and or has past lives, even though it may be stored with secondary or third consciousness. So I have a whole theory on consciousness and how many forms or levels of consciousness can be carried through one human experience. And I don't believe that all of them are connected. And so sometimes I think, as someone who has done a bunch of past life readings on people, if you've ever wondered why I don't do them anymore, it's because I came into that. I had an experience where I discovered a lot about myself, and then I discovered it in other people, and I felt immediately unethical doing it, because I realized I couldn't differentiate the past life that was connected to all consciousness that was in that human vessel, that it wasn't just one. And I could not differentiate the two. And I couldn't tell which was actually going to be beneficial for the human. And so I pulled myself from the experience, because I just refused to do anything that's going to harm someone's greater good. So I backed up. Not everyone will see that way, and that's fine. That's just my personal experience. So take it or leave it. Anyway, there's that. The next one. Okay. This one is life reading 3744-5. We're going to go into that, so don't really worry about that. I wasn't going to go into it, but I decided to. The next one is life reading 281-2. 281-2. In the one before this, we find the entity was in the Egyptian land. Wait, did I already say this one? Bella. Wait. Case study 364-3. 281-2. Never mind. I gave you both. Yeah, those are the ones I think you should read. I can't read my own fucking notes. Go me. Hold on. We're getting there. Ba, 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 ba. So, before we go into his scientific beliefs, I want to go into one of the most pivotal, in my opinion, the most pivotal cosmology that is threaded throughout all of the Akashic Records that has been documented through Edgar, is that he believes that you are here as a soul that is put here from a God who is a creator, who sent his son here to die for your sins. And you are here to ascend as high as you can to the highest form of consciousness, to the highest form of self-education, to the highest form of self-awareness, to understand the universal law of love to the deepest level, so that way you may become a permanent bound companion to God when you die. bound and alchemized for all time and eternity. Fascinating, huh? Anyone else here bound and alchemized to a god for all time and eternity? Oops. I did that. My bad. It's not God the creator, but that creator in any, or frankly, I don't think any of them are creators in the way that he did. But he saw it as there was a God who created. And this God created us. Like we are the children of that God. That is not my belief in any way, shape, or form. I think we know this. We know this about Bella. So me knowing that, I think one of two things happens. You feel something in your body and you're like, fuck, do I want to read that? Do I want to read anything by someone that thinks that way, but it's so antithetical to my actual like spiritual beliefs? How do I get through it? How do I get through it? And I ripped it apart. That's the best thing you can do. So what you wade through the cringe. That's a great way of putting it. Someone just typed that up. You wade through the cringe. But here's the thing. Do I believe that gods create? Yeah, themselves. Absolutely. I believe that they created themselves. They evolved themselves over and over and over. I believe they are the fucking masters of it. That's what makes them gods. That's what makes them divine, is they have mastered this. They're good at it. They saw and observed themselves at level 4,000 billion, million, trillion, whatever, pick a number. They saw themselves and they were like, video game level, max the fuck out. Okay. And then they were like, they just kept pressing that X and they were like, evolve, 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 evolve. Boom. Look at us. We're dope. Do I think that they did that? Yeah, 100%. Do I think that they want us to linearly discover who was the first one to do it? No, because I think that they were all a part of each other at one point. I think that they are all a part of each other. Do I think that they come from some like unintelligent goo? No, I don't. I think that that space itself is intelligent. I think that matter itself is intelligent. I think that every single thing that makes us us is intelligent. Because it functions. So it has to be intelligent. It has its own form of intelligence. So no. Do I think that there is an authority in creation? No. And I will die on that hill. I would rather die than believe in an authority. Because it negates free will from the very get. It negates the beauty of evolution itself, in my opinion, which is expansion. How can you expand under law? The law of love itself speaks of expansion. To love on a universal level is to feel love on a universal level, which is horrendous and beautiful all at the same time. Absolutely crushing and mind-boggling while being something we can hardly fathom. So, okay, cool. He believes in this, a singular creator that creates. It's very myopic. Okay, whatever. It makes him feel good. That's fine. I can accept that. So then he talks about alchemization and understanding the self being the number one priority. That I can get on board with. The prioritization of the self, alchemy, really wanting to expand the self, really wanting to allow love to be the dominant reason for expansion. I'm here for it. I'm committed. Okay? So that made me feel really good about moving forward. Then he talks about companionship, that God only sends us here for companionship. Well, is that super antithetical to what I think? Because if I think that we are part of the it and it is the part of us and we are it having a human experience, well then no, I do want to be my own companion. So I think I'm going to be stuck with myself for all time eternity. So I probably do want to be a better companion to myself forever, or a better companion to the entities in which I have connections with. And then with that being said, do I want to eternally be worthy of having the connection in which I have to the divine that I've bound myself to, alchemized myself to for all time and eternity? Yes, I do. And if that means becoming more self-aware, becoming more me, becoming more evolved, and fighting for that type of evolution, then I'm fucking here for it. So this is how we fight through the cringe. I wanted to give you like a legitimate, practical way of doing it. That was what I did. I sit with the thing that makes me the most uncomfortable. I take it and I rip it apart and I look at it and I take what feels really, really good and resonates with me, because I am a non-traditional, non-conformist as a practitioner. I am a revivalist as an academic, but I am a revisionist to my core when it comes to being a practicing anything. I will look at it and revive it by revising it. And I know that that's kind of hard to follow, but truly, it's the only thing that makes me feel safe, is by knowing that I have ran it through my filter enough time, ran it through the filter that is Abella enough times that my body said, this is safe and at peace within the spirit. You deserve to do that with everything. So as you are reading things or taking in new information that doesn't necessarily feel like at the get, it resonates with you, you are allowed to run it through your filters and say, that doesn't resonate with me, but that doesn't mean that I should negate the entire thing and throw the whole thing in the trash, you know? So let's look at his perspective on evolution and science, because I think that this is something else that we should look at. And I did this very intentionally. I did this the way that I do everything. So if you're curious to how I revise something, I do comparison charts. So I'll take what the person thinks and I'll compare it to what we have available to us through science, and I'll compare it to what I have available to me through lived experience. That's what makes me a non-traditional nonconformist, is that I hold my own lived experience as being valid. Okay? We're understanding of that? Okay. So Edgar, he spoke of ancient civilizations, specifically Atlantis, and accepted long spans of time based on clairvoyant readings. So what I know is that based on his clairvoyant readings, based on his readings as a psychic, and what he saw, because everything was dominantly clairvoyance. He's like, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I'm seeing. He saw that there was very, very long spans of time that this civilization existed, but he never gave us any dates. He never gave us any like specific dates to when the Atlanteans were here, which is kind of a bummer, because guess what? We do have dates. So my next move would be, underneath what I know about what he said, I write what is fact or what I have available to me. So Earth is 4.54 billion years old. Life emerged 3.5 billion years ago. Homo sapiens are 300,000 years old, and they established through radiometric dating. All this information that we have available to us is radiometric dating. We have geology, we have ice cores, we have dendrochronology, and we have plate tectonics. So we have ways of actually dating things. He didn't give us that. That's okay. That's fine. He didn't get that with the Atlanteans or Atlantis. They didn't give him that information. But that's important for my brain, for me to know. I need to know that if I'm going to say that I believe someone, right? Okay, so he believes that evolution is a spiritual descent into matter. The physical forms prepared for incoming souls. So that these forms that we have, we were not born with souls, but the souls came into the body. The souls are separate from the body. So kind of like we're this like soulless thing, and that the soul goes like into the body. Now, I don't disagree with him here. I kind of see consciousness as like an overlay, but I do see it as more like molecular. I don't see it as something that is outside of us that comes in, and that these meat suits mean nothing. I see it as something that is a part of us, like it is inside of us, and that as we are born, the molecules, the nervous system, the whole thing comes together to support consciousness that is it's a part of us. It is us. I don't see it as these two separate things. Like one is bad, one is good. See, this is where moralism becomes very important to look at here. It's easy. to throw moralism into something when you're like, your human meat sack is a piece of shit and didn't have consciousness until God decided to give it to you. Right? Very different when I say to you, actually, your consciousness is fucking molecular. That shit is in your body, is intracellular. Consciousness is a part of being human. It's
So like
through humanity.
it's like how with crabs, they're born and they're like very soft, and then as they age, their shells get harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's two ways of looking at it. And there's lots of ways of looking at it. I refuse to subscribe to the way of looking at it that these meat suits mean nothing until some fucking soul floats into the body. I won't do it. So what do we have scientifically? Humans we have common ancestors with primates. We have evolutionary lines that include a bunch of fucking shit, okay? A bunch of Homo sapiens, Homo erectus, and this is all supported by fossils. We have ancient DNA. We have DNA proving that we evolved from other things, from fucking fish and from, my God, fish and monkeys. I can't think of what they're actually fucking called. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we have proof, okay? Like, we don't necessarily need to deny that. And that's what I think gets tricky about like blending science and spiritualism, is like we're so fast to be like, well, you know what? Let's throw science in the trash can. It's like, why can't consciousness be a part of your body? Why does it have to be this thing that's external that floats into your body? Why can't it just actually exist within you? But yeah, we have proof that we evolved. We are not just these things that appeared one day. Edgar did not have any evidence of genetic data in his readings. He didn't speak of it. He didn't have evidence of it. He avoided it like the plague. It makes sense because he really didn't like the conversation of evolution. I wrote here, chimpanzees and humans share 98 to 99% DNA chromosomes. There's 2 chromosome fusions that provides direct evidence of common ancestry. We also have whatever. I wrote a bunch of shit that doesn't matter for this, but like the point is, like, if he doesn't have any genetic data, then my goal at that point is to then go ahead and look up genetic data that we have. Right? So this, what I am showing you is how we revise. That's what I'm showing you. I'm showing a practical way to revise. So if you're going to go through his thousands of fucking readings at some point in your life, these are just practical ways of revising the readings. Then there's consciousness. So consciousness exists prior and independent of the body. We have no single unified theory. We have no leading models that include this. Okay? What we have available to us is that consciousness strongly correlates with the brain. That's all we have. That's all the scientific data that we have. That consciousness strongly correlates with the brain. I don't know about you, but the brain is heavily a part of the body and always has been. So if what we have scientific data-wise is that as of right now, we have theories that it strongly correlates with the brain, I'm going to lean in that direction. And I'm not going to lean in the direction that it's independent of our body. So we also have that karma is soul's memory carried through lifetimes. We don't have any science backing that up or ripping that apart. Really, all we have is that memory is stored in neural networks in the brain. That's it. We have no evidence of reincarnation or karmic transfer. All we have is that there are neural pathways and neurons in the brain that store memory. There's Moonwalking with Einstein. It's a really good book on memory. If you haven't read it, I highly suggest it. It's a great book, especially if you have like memory issues. It's a really, really good book. But yeah, we don't have science to back that up. So it's something that's, I think, very fascinating. When you can't find science to tear apart what someone says, I think it's really when you can take a moment to look at it and kind of go like, fascinating. What can we do with this? Um, what I will say is that his methods were through, obviously, only through his own self-induced trance. Lastly, I look at the methods in which we receive these things. Obviously, through science, what we have is observation, something that needs to be testable, something that needs to be repeated, something that needs to be reviewed, and something that is feasible. So, I think it's just really important to remind yourself that in this world, what we are looking for is right in front of us. It's we can kind of pick things apart, and we need to feel okay. And in order to do that, I'm just giving you permission to do that. Do it with everything. I challenge you to do it with the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon next. Maybe I'll do a class on that, because that's a lot. All right, we're at 6:20. I'm going to give you a break, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to read. Dun dun dun. We're going to read reading 3744-5. I'm going to point out some really cool points in this. And then I'll let you go. Any questions? Anyone want to ask any questions while we're taking a little break?
That's not a break for you.
I wasn't actually going to take a break. I was giving everyone else a break. Yes, who should I paint? Kara asks. I don't know. Paint.
I think you're right, though, about like science and spirituality. I think people try to make them adversarial, and I really think that genuinely they meet each other. Science just maybe hasn't gotten to an aspect of something that spirituality has tackled that I think in time, will meet each other.
Oh yeah, 100%. It typically does at some point.
Well, and that's kind of where I think spirituality, funny enough, when you let them not be adversarial, can guide the direction of the research that science does to meet the spirituality.
Yeah, I agree. You joined the Patreon but can't find the links to the Zoom. So the links are if you're in the Patreon, you go to collections, you'll see in the collections you'll see Zoom link, and you click on that, and that has the Zoom link. And then in the collections there's also something that says WhatsApp, and there'll be a link for the WhatsApp group as well. We have to go into the collections area in the Patreon. The Patreon.
Yeah, and if it's on the phone too, it's a little weird. You have to actually like go in
Oh.
to like a second step for some reason before you can even see the option for collections.
Oh. Did you
Yeah,
hear
let
that?
me see if I remember that.
If you didn't hear that, Ryan just said that if you're on your phone, there's like an additional step in order to get into the collections part of the Patreon. You have to like go into it.
Yeah, funny enough, when you go in, you select it, and then you have to reselect it again, and then the option shows up for home, post, collections, chats at that point. So there's nothing intuitive that tells you have to tap it a second time. So I think a lot of people don't even know that those options exist if you're only using your phone. On the website, it's very apparent, but on your phone, you have to do that extra step, which is zero intuitiveness.
Great. That's good.
I have a question.
Okay.
Um, so you said that fish and monkeys, like somewhere around there, are the evolution of us. But I was wondering, what about the intelligence and the spiritual self of a human that animals like don't have? Like, as in, like you know how animals are very sentimental, like they have feelings and emotions, but they don't do brain puzzles like we do. Um, they don't like talk different languages and learn how to talk different languages like us. So I know that you said that consciousness is associated with the brain, but in your own private practice, like what do you think that our spiritual self and like intelligence comes from that's different from animals that makes us so different from them?
Well, consciousness and sentience are different. So
Yeah.
being sentient is being alive, and everything is alive, for the most part, unless it's non-sentient. But not everything is conscious. So humans are conscious. But there's a lot of studies right now that are saying cephalopods are also potentially conscious, which we don't. I would like to just be very clear. It is a theory that cephalopods are conscious. Everyone keeps saying they are, they are, they are, and I'm like, it is still a theory. It's not been proven a scientific fact yet. But it is it's a big theory, and they're working very heavily on trying to prove that theory, which would be amazing. Which would mean that there is, in fact, a water based animal and a Homo sapien, that we are both the two dominant conscious beings on the planet, which is very, very cool. There's other theories and other studies of other beings being conscious, which is really cool. I mean, there's even studies right now that mushrooms have some form of consciousness because of the way mycelium communicates, and it being the largest organism on the planet. Intelligence is different depending on the species. So to say that we are the most intelligent really doesn't make any sense. We're the most intelligent Homo sapien because we're the only Homo sapien. But am I more intelligent than a mushroom? Well, no, because mushrooms do their job better than humans, I think. So we're living out our purpose and our job as best we can. I believe that the layer of consciousness that humans experience is facilitated by divinity. So that sounds a lot like me saying divinity created it. Ultimately, I think we're part of it. Yes, the reason why we are very much aware that we're alive is because we are made up of the same matter in which the divine is made up of as well. So I think that the divine itself is facilitating the consciousness within the human experience. And potentially, if cephalopods are conscious, then what we're getting there is an expansion of consciousness into other beings, which is incredible. And being that I work very closely with Leviathan, I'm not surprised. So that's my take on why we are aware that we're alive, is because we're conscious, and that the way we evolve consciousness is through awareness and becoming more aware of ourselves. And it's different only because other beings, other animals, are just not conscious. They're alive, they're sentient, they're intelligent, but they're not conscious. And
Okay.
that's not just me saying that or my practice. That is just like scientific proof. They're not so far. We have no actual proof that they are conscious. So, unfortunately, that'd be cool though. It'd be cool if we lived in a planet filled with just everyone's conscious. That would be cool. But
And my next question is like I'm kind of new with the what we're talking about, but when you say the Atlanteans, who are you referring to?
Atlanteans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm referring to beings that he believed lived on this planet first, like a human. They're not humans. It's a race of, isn't it a race, a species of being, I think is a better word for it. It is a species of being that inhabited Earth before humans. So he calls them the Atlanteans.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And that they died because of their mishaps with using Earth technology. That's his belief. um, yeah. Good questions. Good questions. Yes. Good questions.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is he the same mystic that I remember? I, there was a book I only read part of like forever ago that I think was like touching upon like the beginnings or like early uh overarching topic of like alchemy or something of the sort. And I was trying to remember exactly like who Edgar Cayce was, and then you have like mentioned like the Victorian era was like, oh, is he just that same guy that had like that one assistant that in that book it was kind of giving like, are they just mentors or is it giving heated rivalry? But also who channeled a bunch of like angels and stuff and like
Mhm.
Enochian magic.
Oh,
No, that
that
was him.
um uh what's his name? The Queen Elizabeth fella and his associate. I think you're thinking of. I can't think of his name offhand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I know he existed, but I'm like, I don't I'm like, I can't remember if that's him or not.
No, that's not him. I can't think
Okay.
of his name either right now. But um it's not him.
John D. There you go.
Oh,
Thank
Yeah.
John
you.
D.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, why the hell can I not think of it? But I was like, yeah,
My
yeah, it
brain
was
just
John
kept
D. and
going
his
like,
assistant and the
D?
angelic. It's a very similar setup though, in terms of like the way that he documented his, so I could see the correlation without really.
Yeah. For the most part, Edgar, his wife did it.
Okay.
The documentations. For the most part, it was his wife. All
Another
right.
real quick question
Yeah.
about past lives. So I know you said that, you know, you repeated. So is it almost kind of like not so much past lives that way, but maybe archetypes that we repeat?
Are you asking? Are you asking for his perspective on it, like how he saw it?
I mean, I guess because I thought, I mean, I've read a little bit about him, but like when I think past lives, I think, a long time ago I was a trader and a merchant and
Mm.
those different past lives. But I heard, you mentioned a little bit how you went in and it was like you couldn't differentiate between, what you saw for maybe yourself or for them. So I was wondering maybe it's
No, no, no,
like
no.
a
That's not
repeat
what
of.
I.
Okay.
No, that's not what I meant. First of all, that's my perspective. My perspective
Right.
on past lives is that a human can carry more than one consciousness.
Okay.
That's my perspective. That one human can have more than one. Not everyone does, but I have encountered it. And so, how can I go into their past lives and see more than one? How do I know what I'm addressing? Does that make sense? If you have more than one consciousness that you're carrying,
Right.
how am I capable of going into your past lives and addressing the past experiences? I also really struggle with past lives because we're seeing life through a linear timeline where in which humans created. And a lot of my experience with the divine is that they have ascended after they were demonized. In other words, they were demonized and then 100 years later had a human experience that is tied to their demonization. So my experience with time has been fucked because of my experience with the infernal divine. And when I was writing my book, they kept showing me their human aspects or entities or human experiences that they were connected to. And I was like, that is 200 years after your name was created. What are you talking about? Your name was created in this date, and now you're telling me that you're tied to this king, which is 200 years later. And they were like, right, time is not linear. My demonization was always leading me to this experience. It doesn't make any sense. I understand that. So I stopped doing past lives because I stopped experiencing time in a linear fashion in a very, very, very intense way. And so all of my readings now, I can't experience time in a linear fashion at all. I can't. It's like it broke. Something broke when that bubble popped, and I can't go back to it. I also saw that humans carry more than one consciousness, and I wasn't able to differentiate the more than one anymore. So we're going to make something up. If this is Amber and this is Johnny, and both Amber and Johnny's consciousness that you're a part of is inside of you, and I'm going into your past lives, how do I know which one I'm seeing? And if I stop seeing time in a linear fashion, how do I know what I'm seeing at all? I couldn't tell. So this was a psychic experience that I had that broke for me.
Okay.
Where I was like, I can't do past lives anymore because it stopped making sense for me because I had too much exposure to something else on when it came to time that I don't know how to articulate because I'm still trying to figure it out. So past lives are way more complex than just like you were a farmer. We can look at it like that if we want. But what is that doing for you? What is that doing for you is my big question. And that was also his big question because he was like, it's not beneficial for you to go back and learn all of your records. And he said in multiple of his readings, it is not a place of books. Your brain will perceive it as a library because you are perceiving the overarching energy of record keeping. And all you have is pen and paper to explain that. But in truth, it is simply just the expansive knowledge of a human's of the human experience on no timeline. That was the craziest part about what Edgar saw, was that it was not on a timeline. So he even struggled with explaining past lives. He would simply say, I'm only going to share this with you because it's affecting you now. Like the way that he's told the Egyptian keeper of the pyramid or whatever. He was like, you're fucking still doing the same shit. This is part of the memory, the karmic memory within your experience that you need to heal. You're scared of using your spiritual abilities because when you use it, then you use it for bad. So he only accessed the records in order to help someone move forward in their current experience to reach a higher vantage point of conscious observation. Does that make sense at all? Or am I getting way too in the weeds with this? I know I feel like I'm on like level 4,000 right now. I'm like, you guys get it, right? You've been doing this for forever. I'm not trying to confuse you. It's just that what we're talking about isn't simple. It's just not. I wish I could simplify it for you. I am trying actually because
It's simplified.
this is the most simplified I can get it. Some of this stuff is so incredibly layered and it's so difficult for me to articulate it because as someone who's practicing, I'm still understanding it. I'm still coming face to face with it all the time and going, what the fuck, you know? And that's what makes it so incredible. But it is not as simple as just saying, I'm just going to look at my past life when I was a farmer. It just isn't. Unfortunately.
That does make sense, actually.
It's something to chew on. You know, it's not something to lock in as a conclusion, but it's definitely something to chew on. Time is not linear. And we know that. We know that that is just a part of the way that humans observe reality here. So when you kind of remove that layer, something weird happens to your brain when you experience time. And I've been struggling with it for the last 5 years, if I'm being really honest. And it's why my past life readings were available. And then I threw them out because I was like, whoa, I saw that. And I don't know what to do with that. And Lucifer was like, well, we're going to dissect it. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not doing that for money. No fucking way. Because I don't understand it worth a damn. So, you know, if I don't get it, I don't charge. I don't do it. That's real fucking simple. And I don't know. To be really honest with you, this may be something I might be working out for the rest of my entire life, if I'm being really honest. And I don't know that I'm ever going to find the answer. I know that I got a hint this week that I need to rewatch the movie Arrival.
Oh yeah, that's a great one in terms of this concept.
Yeah.
I'm gonna watch it.
So I'm excited to rewatch it. I think there's probably a little nugget in there for me. Are we ready?
Yeah, let's dive back in.
Okay. Someone said, wait, what movie? The movie is called Arrival. Arrival. All right. So the question, what are the laws governing relativity, of all force. So if we can imagine Edgar, he's like in his trance. He's laying on the couch in the hotel and he's like, la 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 la, I'm Edgar. I'm going to tell you. Okay? And this is what came out of this guy's mouth. In giving the manifestation of such an law, which does exist, we first must consider that is called force. And that force then in its relation or the relativity of that force to all force. I bet I've lost you all. That's okay. There are, as were set in the beginning, as far as the concern is of this physical earth plane, those rules or laws in the relative force of those that govern the earth, and that the beings of the earth plane, and also that same law governs the planets, stars, constellations, groups that constitutes the sphere, the space in which the planet moves. These are of the one force, and we see the, hold on. Hold, we have a Junie moment. All right, let me dissect that for you before I keep going just a little bit, just so you can kind of like follow a little bit of his blah blah words. More or less, he's explaining that in order to understand force, the question itself, what are the laws governing relativity of all force? So in order to understand the laws of force, we have to actually look at everything that created the law of relativity within the physical plane of existence. We have to look at it all. We have to look at it from the very beginning. If we're going to understand it from a spiritual lens, we need to look at it from a physical lens as well. That's basically all he's saying in just a lot of words. Okay. So he basically says, and we see the manifestation of the relation of one force with another in many various ways as is shown. For in fact, that which to the human mind exists, in fact, does not exist. For it has been in past before it is to the human mind in existence. Now, hold on. I know that that's a really convoluted way of speaking, but what he was trying to say is what we see as a physical reality has already existed. We are players in a much bigger play, is what he's getting at. Okay? In this, we see the law of the relations of conditions, space or time, and its relation to the human mind, as is capable of obtaining information upon the earth plane from a normal force or condition. In other words, the human mind can only do so much. Okay? I'm just gonna dissect it down to like, I'm gonna make it easy, okay? Make it easy. Hence, we bring the same word, relativity of force, to prove its own self and condition, for we have as in this. So he's basically saying, like, we perceive this reality as such, and he's going to explain different ways in which the human mind perceives relativity. The earth in its motion, held in space by that force of attraction or detraction or gravitation or lack of gravitation in its force. So those things that do appear to have reality and their reality to the human mind have in reality passed into past conditions before they have reached the mind. In other words, he's saying that time is not linear, and so we make this reality. The earth spins because we say it spins. Everything is relative to the mind's ability to perceive it. We've heard this before. But this is what he's saying. And again, think of the time period, guys. Think of the time period. This is not like Candace in living in like Palm Beach giving you a tarot reading on TikTok. Okay? She's not like, guys, everything your brain says, it comes into reality, manifestation. This is a man laying on a couch in Ohio. Like, I think, yeah, in Dayton, Ohio. On Valentine's Day, 1924. Okay? Like, take it into consideration. So, what did I leave off? For with the Earth's laws and its relations to other spheres, has to man become a past condition. So it is reached only in the further forces, as we'll show, and is given for man to understand in this developing or this evolution from sphere to sphere or from plane to plane in this condition. So he's saying that, like, let me keep reading and then I'll explain. Hence, we find to the normal mind there is no law as to relativity of force, save as the individual may apply, same in the individual's need of them that is sufficient. There is no law to relativity unless we discover it, unless we see it, unless we know it. Once we do, it becomes a part of our reality. That's all he's saying. Ish. There's a little bit more in there, but it's semantics. Okay. What is a this is where I get annoyed with him because he's like, science. Let's talk about God. And then he's going to go into God in a minute. Okay. So what is meant by the gods? Now let's be clear. He said gods. So that's exciting. He's acknowledging multiple. What is meant by the gods of the universe referred to in the readings? Oh, that's a lie. I'm just kidding. That was the question. I take it back. Okay. Well, whatever. Somebody said something about gods and I got excited. But he responds, just as in this, all force has its incentive, the directing or creating of that force. That force to the human mind, apparent as different conditions or relations as referred to as the God or the ruling force of that individual force, as it is given the expression and is referred to as the God, as of war, as of peace, as of water, as of the elements under the sea, as of those above, as the God of high heaven, the ruler over all, the one in all, and the all in one. All force has its incentive, the directing or the creating of that force. So I just want to repeat that. Because then he says that force to the human mind, apparent as different conditions or relations as referred to as the God or the ruling force of that individual force. That it is giving the expression and is referred to as the God of war, of peace, of water. Does that make sense? So it's a little more complicated here, but what he is saying is that all force has purpose. So he is acknowledging science here. He's saying all force of any kind has purpose. But it's also God. It's also divine, that you can't have one without the other, is what he's saying, that they're mingling together. So he's acknowledging that we must see that they are all in one and one in all. And it's kind of a very, very, very long-winded sentence of saying science and God go together. Sort of. Again, there's a lot of nuance, but whatever. The next question is really interesting. Give the best method of helping the human family increase in knowledge of the subconscious soul or the spirit world. It's a great question. So she's basically saying to Edgar, give us advice on how to be better family members and how to grow our human soul. So he's like, I got you, YOLO. The knowledge of the subconscious of an entity or an individual in or of the human family is as of one integral force or element, or self in the creation of the human family, and until the entity or individual as individuals make this known to groups, classes, countries, nations, the greater study of self, that force will only be magnified. That of the spirit is the spark or portion of the divine that is in every entity, whether complete or of the evolution to that completeness. This paragraph I'm going to really, really hit on because it's really cool. This is a really cool paragraph. Okay, let me break it down to make it a little bit more sense. He's saying that the human subconscious is an entity. That the conscious mind itself is an entity. It's a being. We are fucking divine. He's acknowledging it. That we are a part of the divine. Now to him, we're part of the divine maker. Okay. To him, we're a mission for a homie in the sky that really wants a companion. But he's seeing that. He's seeing this. Keep this in mind. He's translating it and telling you his opinion. He's slapping his UPG on it. But let's remove the UPG for a second and just look at the gnosis. This is cool gnosis. This gnosis is that the subconscious is in itself an entity of the divine. And that the spirit is the fucking spark or portion of the divine that is in every single fucking person, every single person here. I agree. And this is something I've also seen throughout my years of being a psychic. Every single fucking person is tied to the divine. When I have clients come to me, they're like, I'm so scared the divine won't come in. I'm like, baby girl, I wouldn't have a job. We're all divine. We're all divine. You're all connected. We're all connected because we're made of them. They're made of us. We're made of them. We're the same thing. So he's acknowledging that, which is so fucking cool. And then he says, or the portion of the divine that is in every entity, whether complete or of the evolution to that completeness. When I read this, I was like, it was such a validation because this has been something I've been struggling with for so long because I have known that consciousness comes here unevolved sometimes, never having any past experience, brand new consciousness ready to evolve. So he says, whether complete or of evolution, that evolution to that completeness. Okay. So there are spirits that come here working to complete the evolution. But then he also says, whether complete, meaning that there are entities, evolutions here that are fully complete that chose to come here for other reasons. Me. Hi. I did that. I don't give a shit about my past lives. That's not why I'm here. I came here for one very fucking specific reason. That's it. That's it. And it was the coolest thing when I read that because I was like, oh my gosh, there was a gnosis that took me a very long time to understand. And it's very cool, but you got to dig through the shit to find some of the things that he says that are like really neat. Okay. So then he says, the study from the human standpoint of the subconscious, subliminal, psychic soul forces. Why does he got to talk like this, man? Is and should be the great study for the human family. In other words, the human family, the consciousness, we cannot grow and expand if we do not figure out who we are. Deity work is more than just fun. It's more than just hanging out with the guys. We love the demons, and I love calling them the guys, okay? I do. They're fun, okay? Lucifer's a hoot. But there's so much more to that. There's so much more to us. This is pivotal to consciousness. Deity work is huge because it's our work. It's our fucking work. It's us. We're them. They're us. So he's acknowledging this, which is so cool. He says, and should be the great study for the human family. For through self, man will understand its maker. For through self, man will understand its maker. And when it understands its relation to its maker, when you fucking know who you are, when Lucifer's like, you're my wife, great, sign, seal, deliver, baby, hand me that contract, let's go, whatever, I don't care if you're your wife, your sister, your brother, your mother, I'm all of it, aren't I? Yeah. And you know what, work with them long enough and you'll find out that you are, and that's fun. That does a lot for your brain. Let me tell you, when you're like, isn't that incest? And they're like, shh, nothing here, sign. Like it's very strange, because we're human and we perceive things through the human mind, but they don't. They want you to know that you are their human family. You're everything to them. So when they come in and they're like, you're everything to me. You're my everything. You're my everything. And you're like, I'm in psychosis. You're not. That's really how they feel. This is generally what they're telling you. It's what they're telling you because that's how they feel. You just may not be able to handle that. And that's okay too. That's a lot to take in. And then you take that information and then you're like, what the fuck do I do with that? And then you're like, I'm his one and only. And then you want to murder everyone else that works with him because suddenly, we want to own the God. And, that's not the point. We're missing the mark there, guys. But all those things that come through, those are very real things because that's how they feel. They see you and they're like, my everything. You're my everything. And it's like, yeah, you really are his everything. He means that. Take that and, touch some grass. So, okay, let's keep talking. So when it understands its relation to its maker, and it will only understand that through itself. So psychics, get ready. It will only understand that through itself. And that understanding is the knowledge and is given here in this state. Each and every person getting that understanding has its individual force towards a great creation and its individual niche, place, or unit to perform. We are here performing the job. The job's done, baby. You succeeded. You came to Earth. You did your job. You're going to die. Sorry. It sucks. I know. I hate to tell you. I'm the bearer of bad news. You're all going to die. It sucks. I know. I'm sorry. But you did a great job. You came here. You did it. It's hard. I know. Life is hard. It is. But it's filled with some cool shit because you came here to decide to do some cool shit. And if you're here and you've stayed here long enough to have this conversation about the Akashic Records, then you're doing even cooler shit because you're expanding even more. It's fucking awesome. But it's individual. That's why I said strap in, psychics, because it will only happen through the self. And I agree with that to the bottom of my heart. I can only lead you to water. Every psychic in this world can only lead you to water. Ain't none of us can fucking heal you, tell you, decide these things for you. You got to do that work. You got to learn what that is for yourself. And once you know what your job is to perform, as you reach the numbers of psychic forces or the phenomenon that may be manifested in Earth's plane. So once you reach that vantage point, that ascension, and your fucking clair abilities start, boom, they come in and your whole life is changing because you now have fucking access and you feel the weight of that access and your life is just like through the roof here. You literally are manifesting it into the Earth's plane. And that understanding for the individual entity, viewed from its own standpoint, with its own knowledge. This is why I say comparison is the thief of joy. I mean that with all my heart. Because when you come to your own standpoint, your own knowledge, and it is obtained and made ready by itself to be manifested through itself toward its own development and in the development of the creation or world in this manner and in this form and in this way, will the development to study the force as given through this manner be assistance to the world. Your dedication to yourself is the only way to heal the world. Next time someone comes to me for, hey, coach, and they're like, I just think I want to be a healer. I know I'm going to be a healer. I think my job in this world is to be a healer. I'm going to say to you, then start with yourself. Go to the mirror. Because it's the fucking truth. You got to turn inward first. And I just, this is my favorite part of this reading. That's why I wanted to read this, because this was one of the most like SPG moments for me. A man that I don't know in 1924 on my favorite holiday spoke words that resonated through my core, and I was like, yes, you Christian butthead. Yeah, fucking support your ass. This is dope shit. And I was so stoked. Anyway, so then he goes on talking about dreams. We don't have a ton of time to go over that. He goes in talking a shit ton about God. But there is some things I do want to hit. So he later on starts talking about the soul being on this plane of existence. And he says, trying to find a good sentence to start up because, he loves a run-on sentence. When one understands self and relation to its maker, the duty to its neighbor, its own duty to self, it cannot, it will not be false to man or its maker. In other words, when you understand yourself and your relationship to the divine, and you understand immediately in that moment your duty to every fucking person you meet. And when you understand that that it cannot be false to man or to God. Everyone's like, I'm scared I'm going to disappoint them. I'm scared I'm going to disappoint them. Be scared you're going to disappoint yourself, and you'll never disappoint them. Show up for yourself. Love yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be compassionate to yourself. And that will inadvertently never fail. It will extend towards others. It will extend towards the divine. And that is a really cool way of looking at life. And then his next words are, give then more thought, for thoughts are deeds, and are children of the relation reached between the mental and the soul, and its relation to spirit and soul's plane of existence, as they do in the physical plane, which one thinks continually, they become. Homeboy's talking about manifestation. Which one thinks continually, they become. What one cherishes in their heart and mind, they make part of the pulsation of their heart. Through their own blood cells, and build in their own physical that which its spirit and soul must feed upon. If you love it enough, it will physically manifest for you. It has no choice. That's how powerful we are. That's how powerful love is. And that with which it will be possessed when it passes into the realm for which the other experiences of what it has gained here in the physical plane must be used. In other words, you want something bad enough, you think about it bad enough, you love it bad enough. Love is the key word. Love. When you love it bad enough, it will physically manifest because it must be used. It must be used. He goes on for a very, very long time. He talks a lot about God. And he talks a lot about dreams. Fuck. Okay. I'll say this and then I'll end us. So she asks him a question. She wants the definition of the word evolution with reference to the human family. And he goes on and on about evolution, okay? But he does say that in reference to the human family means rather resuscitation of those forces that have gradually brought man to understand the law of self from within. I love that he uses the word resuscitation. It's something that we have to resuscitate, to bring back, which means we lose it. So that feeling of like, I just don't feel connected. I just don't feel connected. That's a part of the experience, guys. Don't blame yourself for it. That's a part of the experience. You got to fight for it. You got to come back for it. You got to bring it back. You got to breathe life back into it. That means it's going to be fleeting again. You're never going to always feel confident and happy in your practice. It's going to ebb and flow. But I really love that. So the resuscitation of those forces that have gradually brought man to the understanding of law, of self from within. So all those beautiful, profound moments where you have divine connection, you have to resuscitate them each time you lose them, each time you forget, each time you feel lost. And by understanding such law has brought the better force in man to bring about the gradual change that has come to man through all the ages. That by doing that, that itself fulfills the purpose of consciousness, of expansion in consciousness. It fulfills the purpose. That's how integral you are to this. Someone said on TikTok, think inverse, not I forgot what he said, but think inverse. And then he said, think of you inverse. And then he said, think of you in the universe. And I was like, whoop. My brain was like, what? Think of me inverse. Think of me in the universe. My brain broke because I was like, oh my God. That's how I think of me in the universe, is if I think of me inverse. If I think of me, then I think of the universe. And it was a cool moment. Anyway. And yeah, the rest of it you kind of have to pick through because he goes into how evolution isn't real and God is everything. But again, you yeah, this was kind of like you gotta pick and choose, baby. You know, it's like, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, you read it and you're like, wow, huge gnosis points, huge SPG, and then he's like, evolution isn't real. And then I'm like, no. How did we get here? No, go back. You know, it's cool. That doesn't mean that you throw out everything that he says, you know. So anyway, I hope that was a solid enough introduction to the Akashic Records through the lens of a revisionist. And I hope that it wasn't horrible for those who are traditionalists who practice with the Akashic Records, and that they don't hate me too much. I'm hated by every traditionalist, so you could just, that's fine. It's really fine. Like across the board, they're like, God damn it, the tree hugger's back. There she is, that demon loving tree hugger. She's coming here to fuck shit up and rip it apart. She can't just love something for what it is. And no, I can't. I'm broken and I need to break things. That's what I do.
To break it in return.
I need to break it in return. It's a problem. But this was enjoyable for me. So YOLO. I hope that you enjoyed yourself. Thank you so much for joining me on the journey that is the Akashic Records. I think I will do a masterclass on potentially going through the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon, but that might have to be like a weekend.
A series?
Like a series, because that's multiple books. It's a lot of books. I would love to do it through the Books of Enoch as well. I am going to do the Watchers Masterclass. I know that I had to redo that. And I accidentally deleted the presentation that I had made for it, and that's why I'm waiting, because I don't want to make it again. It wasn't supposed to be a lecture style class. It was going to be a presentation style class, unlike this one. I just didn't have pictures for this. What do I do? Say like God with like a big circle on it and like a question mark and me next to it, like I don't like what the fuck, you know. But the Watchers, like I had cool pictures and shit. So I accidentally deleted it. So we're gonna have to wait for Bella to make a new presentation on the Watchers. But I also really, while I have you, I really want to do a master class on manifestation. And I had an idea of doing like a master class week, like a week of manifestation, and where we actually work on work on it like throughout the whole week together. And then I would take off a week from doing readings. I would take off a week from my students, and then I would just we would meet every single day, and we would do it for a week, like a kind of like a getaway, but we're not going anywhere. It's over Zoom. Just thoughts. I don't know if you're interested in that. Kind of maybe on the Patreon, be like, Bella, yes, masterclass on manifestation would be really cool. Let me know. But yeah, this was fun. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for joining me, everyone, on the Tiki Talk. Thanks for showing up to class on the Patreon. I hope it was helpful. We'll see you next time.